What happens when the owner of 5 restaurants scrubs tables undercover and sees his manager ignore a struggling elderly customer? Kellan Rivers had run the company for 6 years, but it had been in his family for over 3 decades. He'd inherited it from his father, who built it from a single diner into a small chain of 5 casual restaurants spread across the state. Kellan had kept the business growing, but lately, something felt off. Reviews were slipping, turnover was high. His district manager, Lewis, kept brushing it off. "Staffing's tight everywhere, boss. It's just the times." But Kellan didn't like second-hand answers, so instead of going through another report, he shaved his beard, dyed his hair a dull brown, got a pair of thick glasses, and created a fake resume for a man named Kevin Rowe, a quiet former warehouse worker looking to start fresh in food service. He chose the 4th location, Brookvale. It hadn't had any major complaints, but it had the highest employee turnover. He figured that was a good place to start. Plus, he'd never personally been to this one. None of the staff would recognize him. Most had never even seen his photo. Corporate kept things separate like that on purpose. He showed up 15 minutes early for his first shift. "Kevin?" A guy with a shaved head and a clipboard looked him up and down. "You're the new busser, right? I'm Darren." Kellan nodded. "Yeah. Thanks for giving me a shot." Darren didn't respond. He just turned and walked into the kitchen. "Follow me." The restaurant was half full, a few families, a group of teens, and one older man sitting alone by the window, his cane leaning against the table. No one seemed to be paying much attention to him. "All right," Darren said, pointing toward the side station. "You wipe tables, refill waters, take dirty plates to the back. You don't talk to customers unless they talk to you. And don't bother the servers, they're already stretched thin." He shoved a rag and spray bottle into Kellan's hands. "Stay out of the way. Got it?" "Got it." By lunch, Kellan had already started seeing the cracks. The servers were clearly stressed, rushing table to table. One of them, Maya, looked barely out of high school and was trying to cover 10 tables. She smiled at customers, but looked like she was about to cry every time she walked past Darren. Darren, meanwhile, stood near the host's stand, scrolling through his phone. Kellan kept his head down and wiped tables, quietly watching. Around 1:30, the older man by the window raised his hand. No one noticed. He raised it again. Still nothing. Kellan glanced toward the kitchen. No server in sight. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry to bother, but I spilled my water a bit. Could I get a napkin?" Kellan nodded and jogged to the side station, grabbing a handful of napkins. As he walked back, he passed Darren. "Hey," Kellan said quietly. "That man at table 9 needs some help. Just spilled his water." Darren didn't even look up from his phone. "Tell a server." "They're all busy. He's shaking a little." "Then let him shake. You're not a nurse. You're a busser," Darren said flatly, pocketing his phone and walking the other way. Kellan stood there, stunned. The old man was still waiting, his hand now resting on the table, like he didn't have the energy to keep it raised. Kellan walked over and gently placed the napkins down. "Thank you, son," the man said with a tired smile. "Didn't mean to be a bother." "You're not," Kellan said. "Can I get you anything else?" The man shook his head. "Just glad someone noticed." Kellan walked back, heart pounding. He felt heat in his chest, not anger, shame. That was his restaurant. His name was on the paperwork, and Darren had just walked away from a man who clearly needed basic help. Later that afternoon, Maya passed by him while wiping a table. "Hey," she whispered, "thanks for helping Mr. Dean. He's a regular, comes in every Wednesday. Darren never helps him, says he's a waste of time." Kellan's jaw clenched. "Why does he keep coming back?" "He likes the meatloaf," she said with a sad smile, "and I think he's lonely." Kellan didn't reply. He just looked around the dining room at Darren laughing with another server, at the dirty tables piling up, at Maya rushing to refill drinks on her own. It was time to stop watching. It was time to do something. Kellan showed up for his second shift the next morning, just as the breakfast rush began. The restaurant was already buzzing when he stepped through the back entrance. The smell of burnt toast and overcooked bacon lingered in the air, and a thin layer of grease clung to the tiled floor just beneath the swinging kitchen doors. No one greeted him. He clocked in quietly and put on a clean apron. As he stepped into the dining area, Maya passed by. balancing 3 plates on one arm. Her other hand was holding a receipt pad that looked like it was already full. She didn't say anything this time, just gave him a quick glance that read more like exhaustion than recognition. Darren was leaning against the wall near the soda machine, sipping a drink through a straw. He didn't acknowledge Kellan either. A clipboard was tucked under his elbow, but he wasn't writing anything on it. Kellan got to work clearing the booths near the window. Crumbs, syrup stains, and crumpled napkins were scattered across almost every table. It was clear no one had wiped them down between early diners. He moved quickly, trying to get them ready before the next wave of customers came in. At one booth, a toddler had spilled orange juice. The mother, clearly overwhelmed, was trying to dab at it with a single napkin. Kellan approached with a clean rag and a calm voice. "Let me take care of that," he said. The mother gave him a grateful nod. "Thank you. I asked someone earlier, but they said they'd send someone. I guess they forgot." Kellan didn't answer. He just wiped the table clean and replaced the wet booster seat. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Darren watching. Not helping, just watching. 30 minutes later, the kitchen printer jammed. Kellan heard it before he saw it. The sharp beep, followed by the sound of someone slapping the side of the machine. Then came the shouting. "Are you kidding me?" a voice roared from the back. Kellan peeked in. A cook in his 50s, wearing a sweat-stained cap and a frayed apron, was yanking paper out of the jammed ticket printer with both hands. "I've told them 3 times this thing's garbage," the cook muttered. "But sure, let's spend money on new chairs instead of the only thing that keeps orders moving." Kellan stepped closer. "Need a hand?" The cook gave him a sideways glance. "You're the new guy, right?" "Yeah." "You ever cleared a jam like this before?" "I've fixed worse." The cook stepped aside. "Be my guest." Kellan knelt beside the printer, carefully removing the crumpled ticket and feeding the remaining rollback through the gears. Within 2 minutes, the machine beeped again and spat out a new order. The cook let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. Name's Leo." "Kevin," Kellan replied, wiping his hands on a towel. Leo gestured toward the fryers. "You ever get tired of wiping tables? Come talk to me. I could use someone with a brain in here." "Noted." As Kellan stepped back onto the floor, he found Maya crouched behind the counter, trying to refill the sugar dispensers while simultaneously answering a question from a customer. Her voice was polite but strained. "You okay?" Kellan asked. She didn't look up. "We're down 2 servers. One quit this morning, said she couldn't take it anymore. The other called out sick." "Anyone coming to cover?" "Nope. Darren said he might see if someone from the evening shift can come in early." Kellan looked around. The tables were filling up, and only Maya and one other server, a man in his 20s with frayed cuffs and a hoarse voice, were trying to handle everything. "Who's supposed to be running this shift?" Kellan asked. "Darren. He's on the schedule as floor lead today." Kellan glanced over. Darren was now at the host stand, chatting with a teenager wearing earbuds. The teen was supposed to be the host, but he wasn't writing names or seating anyone. The line at the door was starting to back up. Kellan walked over. "Hey, Darren," he said, keeping his voice steady. "You might want to jump in. People are waiting to be seated." Darren didn't look up. "That's what the host is for." "He's not doing anything?" Darren finally raised his eyes. "So, not my job to babysit." "I thought you were floor lead today." "I am, and my job is to make sure the place doesn't burn down, not to do everyone else's work." Kellan took a slow breath. "People are walking out." Darren shrugged. "Then let them walk. That's less stress on the kitchen." Kellan stared at him, stunned. "That's your solution?" "I don't get paid enough to care about every table," Darren said, turning back to the host. Kellan turned and walked away before saying something he couldn't take back. But he was done being quiet. He returned to the tables and helped Maya run food. When one customer asked if a dish could be made without butter because of a dairy allergy, Maya froze. I think so, but I don't want to promise. Darren usually handles special requests." Kellan stepped in. "I'll ask Leo. He'll know." In the kitchen, Leo confirmed it could be done. "Tell her we'll use olive oil and keep it clean." When Kellan brought the update back, the customer smiled. "Thank you. Most places just say no without checking." Maya blinked. "You actually went and asked?" "Why wouldn't I?" She didn't answer, but her eyes said enough. By 2 o'clock, Maya looked like she was about to collapse. Her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for a water pitcher. "Take a minute," Kellan said. "I'll cover your section." "I can't just—" "You can. Go." She hesitated, then stepped into the back hallway. Kellan picked up the pitcher and began refilling glasses. As he did, he overheard the host speaking with Darren again. "She asked me to wipe menus," the teen said. "But I don't do that." "Then don't," Darren replied. "She's not your boss." Kellan turned. "Your customers are touching those menus all day. You're okay with them being sticky?" Darren narrowed his eyes. "You got something to say, Kevin?" "No," Kellan said slowly. "Not yet." That evening, once the rush had died down, Kellan found Leo outside by the dumpster, smoking a cigarette. "You ever think about leaving?" Kellan asked. Leo exhaled. "Every week, but I got a kid in college and a mortgage. This place pays on time. I can't start over." "What about Darren?" Leo looked at him. "That guy? He's been here 5 years. Knows how to talk just enough to keep corporate off his back. But don't let him fool you. He hasn't lifted a finger in years." "Why does no one say anything?" Leo took another drag. "Because the moment you do, he finds a way to make your life hell. Hours get cut, shifts moved. Suddenly, you're the problem." Kellan nodded slowly. He had seen enough. The next morning, he arrived early again. But this time, he wasn't there to bus tables. He stood in the back office, waiting. At precisely 8:45, Darren walked in, sipping a coffee. He froze when he saw Kellan sitting at the desk. "Who are you?" Kellan stood. "Kellan Rivers, owner." Darren's mouth opened, then shut. Kellan didn't wait. "You ignored a regular customer in clear distress. You refused to support your team. You let guests walk out. You belittled staff and failed to lead. You're done." Darren stepped forward. "You can't just fire me without—" "I just did." Silence. "Someone will walk you out," Kellan said. "You can leave your badge on the desk." Darren stood frozen for a moment, then finally dropped his badge and stormed out. Kellan took a breath, then picked up the phone. "Maya, can you come to the office for a minute?" He had more work to do, but for the first time in days, he felt like the place might actually breathe again. The air was heavier than usual when Kellan stepped back onto the floor later that morning. Darren's abrupt removal had rippled through the restaurant with a quiet shock. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it like a window had finally opened in a room that had been sealed too long. Maya was still in the back when he returned from the office. Kellan had asked her to come by, but she hadn't yet. He didn't blame her. Trust didn't come easy in places like this. Not when people who spoke up usually found themselves scheduled for Sunday doubles until they quit. Kellan walked back through the kitchen, where Leo was wiping down the prep table in between orders. He looked up briefly. "Words out," Leo said, not bothering to hide the relief. "People are already whispering." "Let them," Kellan replied. "It's time they knew someone's paying attention." He found Maya near the walk-in, folding a damp towel with slow, deliberate movements. "You have a minute?" Kellan asked. She looked over, cautious. "Yeah." They stepped into the break room, a narrow space with 2 metal chairs and a vending machine that hadn't worked in years. Kellan sat, but Maya stayed standing. "I know you've had a rough few weeks," Kellan began. "That much is obvious." Maya folded her arms. "Is this about what I said yesterday? I wasn't trying to cause trouble." "You didn't," Kellan said. "You showed more leadership in 2 shifts than the person running this place did in 5 years." She stared at him, unsure. "I'm serious," he continued. "I saw you hold the floor together without support. I watched you handle guests, cover for missing staff, even take care of regulars no one else bothered with. That doesn't go unnoticed." "I just didn't want to let everyone down," she said finally, "even if it meant skipping breaks or staying late. I figured if I worked hard enough, maybe things would get better." "They will," Kellan said, "but not because you're burning yourself out. We're going to fix this from the top down." She nodded, though her expression was still guarded. "I want you to cover as interim floor lead," Kellan said. "Just for now until we can bring in someone permanent. You'll get the pay bump, and I'll make sure you're not carrying the weight alone." Maya blinked. "Me? You've earned it." There was a long pause before she finally responded. "Okay, I'll try." "I don't want you to try," Kellan said. I want you to take the role, and I want you to tell me when something's not working. No more silence. She nodded again, firmer this time. By lunchtime, the restaurant was already feeling different. Not fixed, not even close, but lighter. Kellan worked the floor with the others, running food during the rush and helping a first-day server named Aaron, who kept mixing up table numbers. Don't worry about it, he said, guiding her toward the right party. Just keep everything simple. Smile, check allergies, stay ahead on drinks. You'll catch on. Aaron gave him a grateful look before hurrying off. He was walking back through the kitchen when he heard someone muttering near the dish pit. A busser named Jorge was struggling to keep up with the incoming trays. Dishes were stacked almost to his shoulders, and the rinse hose had slipped off the hook, spraying a fine mist across the floor. Kellan grabbed an apron and stepped in beside him. Need a second set of hands? He asked. Jorge looked up, startled. You're the owner, right? Still know how to wash a plate. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the rhythm of rinse scrub stack taking over. You ever worked dish before? Jorge finally asked. Years ago, Kellan said, at my dad's first place, back when we had to hand dry everything to avoid water spots. Jorge chuckled. That sounds miserable. It was, but it taught me how much work goes unnoticed back here. Jorge nodded, scrubbing a cutting board with renewed focus. When the rush finally slowed, Kellan stepped outside to check on the curbside area. 2 cars were waiting, and the runner, an older woman named Denise, was hustling between them with a handheld tablet and a to-go bag cradled under one arm. Hey, Kellan said, jogging over. You doing all of this yourself? Yeah, Denise said, not slowing down. We were supposed to have 2 today, but the other girl's grandma got sick. I told her to go. Family comes first. Let me help carry these out, Kellan said. She hesitated, then handed him a bag. Table 6. She's been waiting a bit, but she's sweet. Kellan walked to the car, handed off the order, and apologized for the delay. The woman smiled and thanked him like nothing had happened. Back inside, Maya was checking in with the servers, jotting notes on a pad. She looked up when she saw him. We're out of clean menus again, she said. I asked Devin to wipe them, but he said they're not his responsibility. Devin? The new host. He's only been here a week. Kellan found him near the soda fountain, leaning against the counter and watching a video on his phone. Devin, Kellan said. Have a second? The teen looked up, annoyed. Yeah? Did Maya ask you to clean menus? I guess. I mean, I'm the host, not janitorial. Here's how it works, Kellan said, keeping his tone even. Everyone here pitches in. If something needs doing and you've got time, you do it. Devin shrugged. No one told me that when I started. They're telling you now, Kellan said. This is your only warning. Next time you blow off a task, you're not on the schedule. Devin's eyes narrowed, but he nodded and walked off. Kellan returned to the floor just as a man in a suit stepped through the front door, tall, with a clipboard clutched to his chest and a badge clipped to his belt. Leo appeared from the kitchen, drying his hands. Health inspector. We're due. Kellan stepped forward. I'm the owner. You're welcome to start wherever you like. The inspector gave a polite nod. We'll begin in the kitchen. For the next 45 minutes, Kellan shadowed him through every corner of the restaurant. They checked fridge temperatures, dry storage labeling, hand-washing stations, and grease traps. When they reached the back office, the inspector paused. You're one of the few owners I've seen who actually walks the line. I've seen what happens when I don't. The inspector nodded thoughtfully. Well, I'll say this. You've got areas to improve, but nothing critical. Just make sure the line cooks stay on top of glove changes, and you'll pass re-inspection without issue. Kellan signed the report and thanked him. As he walked out of the office, he saw Denise laughing with a guest at the counter, Jorge handing off a clean rack of glasses to Aaron, and Maya checking in with Leo about prep for dinner service. None of them were perfect. They were tired, overworked, and used to being overlooked, but they showed up anyway. Kellan stepped behind the host stand and refilled the hand sanitizer dispenser. Devin was wiping menus now, working slowly but steadily. Good to see, Kellan said. Devin didn't answer, but he didn't stop either. Kellan turned to Maya, who was updating the floor chart. Dinner crew coming in? 2 servers and a new closer, she said. Leo's staying through to help them on board. We'll need to hire more, Kellan said. I know someone, Maya replied. She used to work here but left when Darren cut her hours. Said she'd come back if things changed? Kellan nodded. Tell her we've got space. He moved back into the dining room and began wiping down the booths. The restaurant wasn't fixed, not yet, but it was finally ready to be rebuilt properly this time, from the ground up. The first 2 weeks after Darren's termination were a test of endurance. With the floor manager gone, Maya stepped into the role cautiously, aware that the team was watching her closely. Kellan remained on site daily, not as a shadow, but as a present and visible owner. He didn't make speeches. He didn't issue memos. He worked stations, listened, and responded. But fixing the culture wasn't as simple as removing one bad manager. The real work started in the silences, the moments when servers hesitated before asking for help, when the dishwasher flinched at a raised voice, when the host double-checked if it was okay to take a bathroom break. It was in those moments Kellan realized how deep the damage had gone. One afternoon, while inventory was being delivered, Kellan caught Leo quietly unloading boxes alone behind the line. Didn't we ask for a porter to assist with deliveries? Kellan asked, stepping in to lift a crate of produce. Leo nodded. He was scheduled, but he no-showed. Again. Kellan stacked the box on the back shelf and looked toward the schedule clipboard hanging by the prep sink. This is third absence in 2 weeks? Fourth, if you count last Friday, Leo replied. Didn't call then either. Kellan didn't hesitate. We're done giving chances. I'll handle the paperwork. Leo wiped his hands on a towel and leaned against the cooler. Appreciate you backing us up. A lot of guys like that don't think anyone will notice. They notice when they're not covered, Kellan said. They just don't say anything anymore. That night, after close, Kellan called a meeting in the dining room. No tablecloths, no formal agenda. Just him, Maya, Leo, Denise, Jorge, and the rest of the core team. I'm not going to pretend this place is fixed, Kellan said, resting his hands on the back of a chair. But we've started something, and I want to finish it right, with you. They listened, unsure of where he was going. I'm hiring a full-time manager for this location, he continued. Someone from outside, but I want the next person to be accountable. So, we're changing how that position works. They'll spend 2 days a week on the floor, working like anyone else. No more hiding in the office. Denise raised her hand slightly. How do we know they won't just become another Darren? Because I'll be interviewing them myself, Kellan said, and I'll be doing it with one of you in the room. Every final interview will have a team member sitting in. Murmurs spread around the room. Maya leaned forward. You're serious? Dead serious. You'll ask the questions I might not think to. You'll know if they're just giving polished answers. Jorge folded his arms. What if we say no to someone you like? Then I'll listen, Kellan said. If the team doesn't trust them, they won't lead here. The mood shifted. Not dramatically, not like a movie, but something in the room settled. Shoulders dropped, eyes lifted. Kellan continued. Starting next month, we're also making a few structural changes. First, all new hires get 3 days of shadowing, not 1. We've been throwing people in too fast, and it's not fair to them or to you. Leo gave a short nod. That'll help. Second, Kellan said, we're replacing the handheld POS units. I've already signed the order. New ones arrive in 2 weeks. No more touchscreen freezes or ticket delays. Maya exhaled, half laughing. I've been waiting to hear that for 2 years. Lastly, Kellan turned to Denise. You've been running curbside alone most days. That ends now. We're hiring a second runner, and until they're trained, I'll be covering half your shifts personally. Denise blinked. You're serious? I don't offer what I won't do. She didn't say anything for a moment, then just nodded. After the meeting, people lingered, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Maya stayed to help Jorge reorganize the dry storage. Leo fixed a broken hinge on the walk-in door. Denise made a fresh pot of coffee, just in case anyone's driving home tired. The next morning, Kellan arrived early again, not as Kevin, but as himself. This time he wore a clean button-down, no disguise. He stepped into the kitchen and poured himself a coffee. Leo handed him a prep list without being asked. We're behind on potatoes, Leo said. You want to peel or quarter? I'll peel. As they worked, a new busser named Talia poked her head in. She was 16, barely 5 feet tall, and had started the previous week. She said, "Table 3 spilled their soda." Leo glanced over. "You want me to grab a mop?" Kellan shook his head. "I've got it." He grabbed a towel and walked out with Talia. "Wasn't sure if I was supposed to say something," she said, walking beside him. "I didn't want to get in trouble." "You did exactly what you should have," Kellan said. "Always speak up, always." She smiled a small, cautious thing and returned to wiping down the silverware tray. By the end of the week, interview scheduling for the new manager role began. Kellan held the first 2 rounds himself, narrowing it down to 3 candidates. For the final interviews, he brought in Maya and Leo. They met in the office after hours, reviewing resumes and talking through the process. Leo leaned back in his chair, flipping through a folder. "This one's got experience, but I don't like how he talked about his last team. Said they were lazy and immature." Maya nodded. "That's a red flag." "He's out," Kellan said, crossing off the name. The next 2 interviews were more promising. One candidate, Carla, had managed a neighborhood bistro for 7 years before it closed. She spoke directly, asked clear questions, and emphasized training and accountability. When she left, Maya turned to Kellan. "She's the one." "I agree," Leo said. "She talked more about the people than the numbers." Kellan called Carla the next morning and offered her the job. She started the following Monday. From her first shift, Carla made her presence known not with volume, but with consistency. She checked in with every position before open, ran pre-shift meetings, and stayed late to review closeouts with Jorge and the line cooks. When a server got overwhelmed mid-service, she stepped in, took half the tables, and kept drinks filled without needing to be asked. She didn't hide. She didn't delegate problems, she solved them. Within 2 weeks, the tone of the restaurant shifted again. Staff started arriving 5 minutes early instead of 10 minutes late. The host stand stayed organized. Guests waited with less impatience. The dining room moved with rhythm rather than chaos. One evening, Kellan sat at a booth near the back with a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Across the room, he spotted Mr. Dean, the elderly regular sitting at his usual table by the window. This time, he had water, a fresh napkin, and a bowl of soup already in front of him. Maya passed by his table, checked in quietly, and continued on. Mr. Dean caught Kellan's eye and lifted his spoon in a small, grateful gesture before taking another bite. Kellan smiled and returned to his meal. He didn't need a big moment, no crowd applause. No dramatic redemption arc. The restaurant was what it should have been all along, a place where people were seen, heard, and helped. Not perfect, but honest. Not flawless, but real. And that was enough.